Do you want to improve as a writer? Today, I'm going to talk about what I believe is the most important and easiest and best way for writers to improve their craft. It's not writing courses, it's not writing software, it's not even writing more, although I think all of those things can be super helpful. Let's talk about what I believe is a writer's secret weapon, and that is reading. Let's get into it. Hey, welcome into the show. I'm so glad you're here today. Recently, my 6-year-old son has fallen in love with reading. It is the coolest thing in the world for me as a writer to see my little boy when he gets in bed with his little book light opening up and reading these books. Now, he can't read all the words, and I don't know if this is just a phase that is going to stick around for a long time or not, but I couldn't be more excited. I'm encouraging him every day when I see this happening because I just think that is the coolest thing in the world. I love reading. It is one of my favorite things to do. In fact, if I had any amount of free time, reading is on my short list of things I would want to do. Writing's probably on there as well. Taking a nap is there, watching college football. Like there's a lot of things that I would do, but reading is maybe even number one on my list. There is so much joy and enjoyment that I get out of reading books. And I hope you do too, for a lot of reasons, not the least of which being that I'm a writer and I want people to read my books when I publish them. But more important than that, I just think there's so much that you can gain out of reading books. And today we're going to talk about a couple different things. One is why I believe reading is really a writer's secret weapon. And I want to share with you a couple of different ways to read that I think can help you as a writer. So before we get into that, I want to talk about kind of my journey as a reader because it wasn't always something that I loved to do. Probably like a lot of kids, I grew up reading for school and reading for projects and work and that type of thing, and didn't really love it. Like I would read or skim some of my classroom books and assignments. Cliff's Notes and Spark Notes were my best friends back in those days because I was reading to prepare for a test or for an exam or for a book report. And it just wasn't my thing. Like there were so many other fun things, sports and video games and all that stuff as a kid that I really wanted to do. I didn't understand or appreciate the value of being a reader. But my mom, all the way back from my earliest memories of my mom, she has loved being a reader. Like she's one of those people where it doesn't matter. Like she would read the back of a magazine, she would read a newspaper, she would read like doesn't matter if there's words printed somewhere, my mom's going to pick up the thing and start reading it. And I remember like she would always be reading books, and that was just something that was kind of always there in the background. And so really, if I traced my love of reading all the way back, I owe it to my mom, which is so cool because when this episode airs is actually going to be right around my mom's birthday. So mom, if you're listening, thank you so much for reading books and happy birthday. But for me, it didn't take right away. I wasn't like somebody who dove into reading as a kid. Like thankfully my kids really are, but I wasn't. And really, it wasn't until I was in college that I really started to appreciate and value reading for reading's sake. So I was in a course. I went to a small college in Virginia, and I was in a course that was a survey course on the book Moby Dick by Herman Melville. And I don't know if you've read that book. It's dense. It's not an easy read, but I have always loved the ocean, and I love kind of the romanticism of being out at sea and just this whole story of Captain Ahab and his pursuit of this whale. Just grabbed me and just kind of pulled me in. And ever since then, I've really just had a love for literature, for reading. And basically, I'm one of those people who's always got a book going. And sometimes I have multiple books. In fact, most times I've got multiple books going, which is super fun. So I want to talk about as a writer, how you can read and how reading can benefit your writing. So the first way that I want you to think about reading is reading for education. So, what do I mean? Reading for education means that you're going to the book that you're reading and you're trying to learn something. Now, the most natural and obvious way that you read for education is to read nonfiction books, right? There's so many great books out there that folks have written on particular topics. I was listening to a podcast, and I wish I could remember who said this so I could give them credit, but I remember hearing someone say, hey, when you're reading a nonfiction book, you are essentially consuming someone's life's work on a particular topic, and they've put it together and bound all their learnings into, 180 pages that you can consume in a week or two, or faster, depending on how fast you read. How valuable is that? That is maybe the best education that you can get, is to take the learnings of an expert and consume everything they've learned that they've condensed down and shared in a book. Imagine doing that and you have a new one every couple weeks and you're learning more and more and more. So, an easy application for you as a writer and for me as a writer is to read craft writing books, right? And there's so many good ones out there. I'll give you some recommendations, some that I've read that have been really helpful. Save the Cat writes a novel, super good framework to use when you're thinking about outlining. Story Genius is also really good. Stephen King's On Writing, another one that I really appreciated. And there's so many more. I'll drop some in the description of this episode for you to have those as well. I'm curious, is there a craft book that you've read on writing that you would recommend? If so, if you're watching on YouTube, drop it in a comment below. But outside of kind of the craft of writing books, there are other areas of your life that you may want to grow or improve in, right? So it doesn't have to be specific to writing, but you can read for education in any number of areas. So, say you want to learn how to repair small engines. Well, you could probably go to your local library or bookstore and find a book that's all about small engine repair. You could read, you could learn, you can grow in that way. But let's shift the focus a little bit to fiction, because I think that most people who are listening to this podcast are going to be fiction writers. So you're writing novels, you're writing a fiction book. Even when you're reading fiction, you can still be reading for education, because as you read from another author, you're going to be doing a case study essentially on grammar, structure, voice, point of view. All of these things you're going to be consuming, even if you're not consciously aware of it. You're going to be consuming all of these things that other writers have used, these techniques maybe that they've used, or the way their characters speak or interact with one another. These are all data points that you can store and use in your own writing. It allows you the ability, if you're reading within the same genre that you write, it allows you to kind of learn the quote rules of your genre as you're reading. Find out what works, what doesn't. One of my previous podcast guests, author Frank Reddy, said he likes to read books, even bad books, so that he can learn kind of what not to do. That in itself is an education. So when you're reading books, I would encourage you to read through an education lens. What can I learn from this book, whether it's fiction or nonfiction? I would encourage you to read widely, both fiction and nonfiction, different genres. Like the more, in general, the more you read, the more it's going to benefit you. And one of the things that I've done, particularly in the nonfiction space, is I've kept a reading journal. And so this is not a physical journal. This is a spreadsheet where I've like listed out quotes or things that I've learned or things that I want to remember from particular books. I will jot down the page number so that I can go back even years later and say, what was this book all about? Because if you're like me, you read a lot of books, you're going to probably maybe remember one or two things if you don't take notes. And sometimes those one or two things are really worth the price of the book. But if you're taking notes, if you have a journal, you can kind of remember, reference those things later. You can leverage those, maybe even years later. You don't know how much of an impact that might have. So number one, I would encourage you to read for education. I think reading is the best education you can get, honestly. Number two, read for inspiration. Exposure to new worlds and ideas and themes and styles really sparks your creativity as a writer. So reading can fill your creative well in such a way that you never have to write from empty. So if you've been writing for any amount of time, you maybe have dealt with writer's block. You maybe have dealt with a lack of inspiration. Sometimes reading a good book can really just rejuvenate you and energize you, give you a thread of an idea that you can pull, that you can leverage and use in your own writing. And you're going to find that as you read, especially if you read fiction books, you're going to find that other authors have really interesting ways of telling stories. And maybe there's something you can borrow from something that you've read. You won't be able to do that, though, unless you're reading a lot. So I want to encourage you to do that. And then third, so you're reading one for education, two for inspiration, and third and finally, and maybe my very favorite, I want you to read for recreation. I don't want this to be a burden at all. So don't think of, oh, here's another thing I have to add to my list. Think of, here's an opportunity for me to turn my brain off, For me to get lost into a good book and just experience the characters and the setting and the story that's without any kind of pressure of me trying to feel like I have to learn or do anything different. I'm just here to consume, just here to enjoy, but I'm still activating my brain. I'm still learning in a way that's really different from maybe a couple hours on Netflix or watching a movie or something of that nature. Reading keeps writing fun. I believe that human beings were wired for stories. We are a people who love stories. Even if you think back to the most ancient of times, there were oral traditions and people told stories. This is just a part of the human existence. And how incredible is it that we live in an era of technology where we are able to consume any book that we want. We have bookstores and libraries and Kindles and audiobooks and so many different ways to consume these great stories. I think it's so important for us to rest. If you've been listening to this at all, you know that that's a big deal for me. Like you can go out and find tons of podcasts that are all about productivity and work and go, go, go. I don't want that for you. I don't want that for me. I think we should have times and seasons and moments of recreation and rest. And one of the best bonuses, I think, of reading simply for recreation or for enjoyment is that your relaxed reading time often solves your blocks. If you're feeling stuck, reading a good book, taking that pressure off and just diving into a good book for 30 minutes or an hour can often kind of free you up and springboard your creativity so that writing becomes much easier for you. So that's really what I wanted to share with you today. I believe that a writer's secret weapon is being a reader. And I wanted to share 3 ways that you can think about reading that might help you. So, number 1, read for education. Number 2, read for inspiration. And number 3, read for recreation. Here's a couple of tips that I want to share, as well as I'll share a couple of the books that I'm reading. So, first, I want you to think about balancing your reading diet. So I don't know if you're the type of person who can read multiple books at once. I am. I pretty much always have more than one book going at a time, but I do have pretty strict rules. I have to keep it to one nonfiction book, maybe 2 nonfiction books, but really only one fiction book at a time because I can sometimes get the storylines mixed up if I'm trying to do more than one. I don't know what that looks like for you, but I would encourage you to read widely. So maybe if you're the only one at a time person, maybe you read a fiction book and then the next one you read is a nonfiction and you go that way. But I want you to balance it between educational reads, inspiring reads, and sometimes things you're reading just for fun. And if you have a TBR, a to be read list, make sure that list includes books from all of those different categories. And also, don't feel guilty about reading your old favorites again. Like some of the best stories are worth being told more than once. And so, if you go back and read Moby Dick again, hey, more power to you. I think you should do that. Don't ever feel bad about that. Now, I want to share just a little bit about some of the books that I'm reading, just to give you an example. I'll share some of these in the show notes as well. The first book that I read every single day is this one. This is the Bible, the Word of God. So if you listen to this podcast, you know that I'm a Christian and that's a really big part of my life. I cannot stress to you how important, foundational, formational this book is for me. Every morning, this is how I start my day. And I really couldn't imagine life without it. In the nonfiction category, a book that I'm reading right now is called Cues by Vanessa Van Edwards. If you don't know Vanessa, she is awesome. She's talking about the secret language of charismatic communication. So for me, as somebody who has a podcast and a YouTube channel, this stuff is super helpful. And I've actually leveraged some of the things that I've learned from this book in this episode. So highly encourage you to go check out that one. In the fiction category, a couple of books that I recently have finished. The first one was on Kindle. I don't know if you can see this. It's called Redemption's Wake by Mark Burns. It's a Western. It's part of a trilogy. And I think at the time of this recording, the 3rd book is not out yet, but it's coming soon. So Mark, if you're listening, thanks for writing this. Really enjoyed it. And the one I just finished a couple days ago is called As a Last Resort by Kristen Wallet. This is her debut novel. I'm not ashamed to admit that I like a good love story. This one was pretty good. So I'd encourage you to go check that one out as well. Hey, I don't know, speaking of fiction, I don't know what is next on my list for fiction books. So do you have any recommendations? What have you read recently that you really loved? Drop it in a comment below. Let me know what I should read next. And I'm curious, what are you reading? Maybe what's your favorite book you've ever read? And what's next on your TBR? Till next time, happy writing and Happy reading, and I'll talk to you soon. Later.